I've been the only person around for a restraint, but pretty much we were sitting at a table and another staff walked away. One had just gone out on break, and at the far end of this table, one kid got up and just started pummeling the other one.
Along the journey, have you encountered any love connections, any interesting moments with other human species?
Yeah, there's been moments. There's been some really beautiful moments and intimate connections.
Who would you say have hurt you in your life?
I've been lucky that I haven't been hurt so badly. My dad, my parents, but my dad. I had a hard relationship with my dad for a long time. I am Darny Reid. Most people call me D. And I grew up in Christchurch, New Zealand. Do you want to know how I would introduce myself in Te Reo in Māori?
Sure.
Oh, I won't do my whole mihi because I'll fuck it up on camera. Ko tāne tuku ingoa mō o te tahi aho. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
So that's New Zealand language?
Yeah.
In a world full of highs and lows, people go through lots of struggles. Some good days and some bad days. Some laughter and some sadness. Everyone deserves the chance to share their story in its purest and most authentic form. I travel the world to meet ordinary people and hear them speak their truths. Remember, we listen and we don't judge. These are their stories.
My name is Darny.
Darny, how do you spell it?
Tarny.
Okay. What do you stand for in life?
Asking big questions.
Oh, girl.
It's a try. I don't know.
Okay, so I think just by our pre-conversation, there's something you stand for in life. You just don't have the word for it. Your personality.
I think it's been a long time. Like I think that what I stand for is something that's really important to me. So I invest the time in trying to work it out.
Okay.
But I don't know that I have the answer yet.
Okay.
I don't.
Right. So you live in New Zealand. Where do you work? You say you work for the government. What do you do for the government? And how is that like throughout the year? You work 6 months?
It's it's in a juvenile detention facility, working rotating shifts. So I've been really lucky rather than working full-time permanently all the time. That was allowed me to work short-term contracts. And I've been even more lucky in that I've been able to dictate the dates in which I am starting and finishing, which is really cool. And they can keep me on the books for 6 months. And then as long as I let them know when I'm coming back, they've allowed me to do that, which has been really, really cool and a great privilege. But we have a residence with 40 beds, 40 boys up to the age of 19. Some of them are really serious offenders. So being tried as adults, so when they get old enough, they will be going to adult prison.
What's the youngest?
The youngest we've had while I've been there was 12. We've had a few 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds through, but typically they're 14 or older. They have to be, it has to be pretty serious for them to be in with us when they're that young. But yeah, I get to do like the fun stuff. I wake them up in the morning, convince them to come and like get in the shower, which can be a nightmare. Often it goes something like, I like open the door because they know that it's going to be me on shift, right? On the door, they're like, morning sunshine, time to get up. Oh, fuck you, fucking bitch. Like, shower's going to be running. I'll give you 30 seconds. And I close the door again, just with a little gap.
I'm sure you don't have all this smile when you're.
Yeah, I do. I
Oh,
say
you
it
do?
exactly like that. Oh, what is it? Because why not? It's morning, everyone hates it anyway.
Interesting.
But rapport is also a really important part of the job. And I learned very quickly that if you are not able to be entirely authentic and to turn up exactly as you are and stand really, really strong in that, you're never going to build good relationships with the kids.
Right.
And you're also never going to be able to be good at your job. And so it's been character building. And part of that has also been leading into the fact that I am kind of ditzy and I do get stuff wrong. And sometimes I'm like really hyper. I can meet them up here. And other times I like need to be pretty firm and have really strong boundaries.
What's the qualification to have such kind of work?
They don't have, like, to work in the residence, you don't have to be specifically qualified in anything. So you've kind of got people coming from all walks. But I did a degree in criminal justice and a degree in psychology and sociology.
Okay. So what kind of training would you receive once you start working there?
You do 6 weeks training, de-escalation and behavior management, as well as like going through as the protocols, the safety side of it. We're trained to deal with everything effectively. So restraint training and like physical de-escalation and safety again is also a really big part of it. And like we have riots, we have shanks, we have like things get bad, or they can get bad. And while we can call the police will not come onto site unless absolutely necessary. I think they've only come onto site twice in the 6 years I've been there. So.
What would you say is one of the bad days you've had?
Bad days.
Yeah, working with the juveniles.
Often it's not the really aggressive stuff that you get to, like, sometimes, okay, there's been periods when we had a girls unit, and working in a girls unit is significantly harder than working in a boys unit. And we only do that when, needs are required. The girls can't be transferred to other residences or whatever. But I'm really, really manipulative, really intense. And so I've had days where, like the first day, I had 3 kids jump on tables and pull the sprinklers, which then floods the entire unit.
Intentionally.
Just to cause a ruckus. But it's the risk to safety is really there, I think. Working with girls because it's unpredictable. So there's been some really, really bad. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. But
I want as detail as possible.
I've been the only person around for a restraint that pretty much we were sitting at a table and another staff walked away. One had just gone out on break, and at the far end of this table, one kid got up and just started pummeling the other one. And I we have radios, I called a response tape
For backup.
and I called for backup and I called it to the wrong unit. So I knew that staff were moving and they were not coming in my direction.
Oh, wow.
But at the same time, I had to move, and I knew that potentially this would be a group assault because all of the kids in this unit fucking hated this kid that was getting pummeled. He couldn't even get up off his chair. He was just getting laid into. So I came around, I tackled this kid, took him to ground. I wasn't strong enough to restrain him standing up because these boys are bigger than me, a lot of them. And like one-on-one, I can't restrain him. If his hands are going, like, I can't get both arms at the same time.
Right.
And so I took him to ground and restrained him there, which was fine. But there was this like really gut-wrenching moment where like I couldn't look up to check to see if any of the other boys who stood up from that table. And I didn't know that they weren't going to come for me and they weren't going to come for this other kid that was being pummeled. And like having those situations, like the other staff that was there was an observation staff. So he was there doing his training. He wasn't even supposed to be doing anything. And he ultimately had to get involved to support me. And I was really, really lucky that no one else stood up from that table because be and that was really not such an ideal moment. But I've also been and like what happened was the camera room saw things unfolding because we've got cameras on us the whole time. The camera room saw things unfolding and redirected the response so that we had staff that arrived and it was finished. It was fine. But it was probably like that position in particular because there are no other staff other than this guy who hadn't even done this training, was probably the highest worst situation that I've been in because it was no one and there should never be no one. But I'm being really, really lucky.
It's bizarre to me for you to say that you're the only one. You sometimes be the only one there with how many juvenile? 10 at a time. Interesting. Have you ever been threatened?
I've been threatened. I regularly get threatened.
Okay. Have you ever been? I'm sure you're dealing with boys.
Yeah.
Have they ever hit on you? I mean, you're a beautiful woman.
They, and sometimes they will try to be inappropriate, but
that's you don't have
if a young person is objectifying you, as they are, particularly without vocalizing that, putting that out there, they have no respect for you.
Right.
And so they will listen to you when they're in a good mood because it's fun and you're cute and it's funny. So, you're asking me to do the dishes, so I'll do the dishes because, you asked me to. But as soon as they're not in a good space, they're never going to engage with you. You've got no power to de-escalate. You've got no power to break them back down. You've got nothing because you don't have a relationship with them because they're just objectifying you and taking the piss. They're seeing you as sex, and that's not coming from a place of respect.
Right.
And so I work really, really hard to really crack down on them if they are inappropriate, and to challenge them on that and to maintain that and empower all of the staff and make sure that all of the staff come on that level with me. But also because you got to bring your big dog personality when you're because of that, I am when there is no art entirely myself, but it's not in any way. I'm not cute when I'm there or funny.
What do you mean?
I'm funny, but it's a different kind of funny. It's like, Darny fell over the fucking wall again. Kind of funny.
Okay.
But it's not. Yeah. Like I work really, really hard to avoid anyone or any of the boys, or just creating a situation where they can make it sexualized.
What do you like about your job?
I get to hang out with teenagers every day, and like they often they are very hurt teenagers, and I've seen shit that I can't even imagine, and I've come from really, really hard places, but they are still teenagers, and their ability to manage their emotions, their ability to even recognize their emotions are super, super limited, and the way that they react and engage is sometimes really, really not okay. But you can also create space for them to improve those things. And you can build where you can create these opportunities and have these interactions where like they haven't had those opportunities before to feel or to be or to, to be all the way up here and ready to pummel someone into a pulp, and for them to be able to come down and de-escalate and like come back. That's progress that you don't necessarily see, and that's also something that not everybody has the space or the ability to do. And it's a privilege to be able to come there and be part of that process. So I think that's most.
I mean, you seem like you have a very positive outlook to it. Even I'm sure your smile or the way you handle situations can be de-escalating. Would you say that?
Sometimes it wants.
Sometimes what?
Sometimes it just wants the lot more.
Okay.
Doesn't always help. Sometimes I'm the problem.
Why is that?
Because I have thin boundaries often, because like I had one young person in particular that was became really obsessed with me.
Obsessed how?
So they were
When he first came
Do you have any odds that you can give her? Like,
I was the face that engaged with him and made a real effort for him to feel safe, because he was petrified. And to like kind of create a safe environment, and as that he had complex sexual charges or whatever, but as that kind of evolved, I became his contact. And so, because I became a safe space, and this is not my intention, this is just how it unfolded for him and his experience. But because I became a safe space, whenever he was upset or whenever things were going wrong, it then became my fault.
Okay.
And so I would get really seriously targeted. I would get so heavily abused, like verbally abused when I was a kid. It didn't even matter. Like, shit would happen, and I would be on a break, and I would come back, he'd be down the corridor, and I would walk past, and he would just, because when things were an issue, they go down the corridor, they have space, whatever. And it would be my fault in a big way. So things like that as well, like, sometimes like, you're also because I'm white, and I feel that can be a trigger for some of our boys.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Does that mean that a lot of the juveniles are not white?
We have a massive overrepresentation of Māori and Pacifica in our justice system. Throughout our justice system, that's no different in the youth.
So a higher percentage of
Māori, which is our indigenous population, and Pacifica, so people from Pacific nations.
Do you think that's coincidence, or is just
Absolutely not.
a messed up justice system?
It is most definitely a messed up justice system. The issues that are overrepresented in every single negative demographic throughout like society, and that they face multiple marginalization, there's cultural like inequities every step of the way. But we also have statistics to say that if you're Māori, you're more likely to get pulled over by the cops. If you have an issue with the police, you're more likely to end up in the cells. You're more likely to have a charge. If you have a charge, you're more likely to be brought before the court. Like every single step, we have statistics to say you are more likely to end up with worse consequences if you are Māori or Pacifica in our justice system. And that in itself is responsible, alongside everything else, for like these issues.
Wow. So basically, this is New Zealand, but apparently it's not that different from the US.
No. We all face the same, like colonial nations, we all have faced the same issues. I think New Zealand is probably a lot further down the line than the US is.
How so?
We have a treaty that we attempt to abide by. And have been involved in significant processes to rectify the wrongs that the government was responsible for all Māori. We also have, I believe, better systems and awareness of in the places that we are failing and the ways in which we need to continue working to decrease those marginalizations.
Okay. So with all of these, do you consider the work to be very intense? How does that play on your mental health, and how do you deal with it?
It wears you down. Of course, it wears you down. I like remaining emotionally removed is really important. You can't work in this space without that. But I mean, you don't realize how many flaws you got until you're working with a room of teenagers, males, who just want to pick everything apart every day. Like every conversation, there are things wrong with me that I never would have realized if I never went to YJ. And you build a tough shell. But yeah, I think I find when I'm there, I have to become this person who is very tough, like have lots of really strong boundaries and really firm ideas of like where I am and who I am. And I don't want to be that person forever. And that's part of the reason why I do travel and I do try to get away from it, because I can't, like, I don't want to be that tough. I don't want to be a big dog. I just want to hang out and like see pretty things, connect, and be happy. But you know, like just I want to live gently, and I can't do that in that space. There is no space to be gentle, because you have to be so firm, and you have to bring a certain energy in order to get anywhere. And I don't want to be that person.
So have you ever been sexually assaulted or had any of these juveniles that reached a bit too far?
No.
Okay.
And if that was something that was to happen, in the same way that if I was assaulted as a staff, I'm very lucky that I have never been assaulted, because virtually everybody that I work with has been. And that's both female or male staff at various points. Sometimes they're really, really seriously. But if any of that was to happen, we have really good protocol and support around, like there wouldn't be further charges later. Those staff would not be working in the same unit. We'd have Pity, which is like a restorative practices in order to manage and like move.
Okay.
So it's there.
So you've been at your job for 6 years now. What are, listen, maybe longer?
Yeah.
You've even lost track of time.
Maybe 7 years.
So how do you take breaks? So basically, this is a contract, right? And how much time do you work per year? And when you're not working, how do you spend your time?
And go places. When I'm working, we work a rotating contract, and so while you're only doing 40 hours per week, typically, so overtime, and it happens a lot.
Because now we're new.
You don't have weekends on weekends, and so your life, and because you're shifting from AM shifts to PM shifts, and that takes a toll on your sleep and things as well, your life just becomes like my social life becomes my work, you know, and that becomes my world. And juggling, like I really enjoy sport. I can't manage sport because I just can't juggle it, and so when I'm not working, I'm also not in Christchurch. I'm not in my hometown. I want to be traveling, and I have been primarily hiking, and hiking has been really cool.
Hiking. Okay.
I really like the mountains. I like the quiet. I like the lack of young people yelling at me. But no,
Trying to get her.
yeah, I like nature.
Okay. So hiking. How did you start hiking? I mean, that is very huge contrast from what you do. Do you think that that's like your escape?
Maybe. Yeah, I guess in some ways it's an escape, but it's also a rebuilding, I think, as well. Like when you're doing long hikes, you spend a lot of time with yourself, which means you're obliged to do all the processing of everything. Everything that's going on in your world, everything that's going on in your head, everything that you don't want to think about. All of that comes up, and you've got to work through it, and you've got to find your why. Otherwise, you won't keep walking. And then, I think that's been really, really good for me in a lot of ways. Though he's still at just as few answers as I did when I started, I think.
That's so stupid.
Yeah, I've grown heaps in hiking and doing those long hikes. And like the first one I did was the longest that I've done. It was 4 months. I walked the length in New Zealand.
Wait, 4 months?
Yeah, it's 3,000 kilometers.
Out of your work, you took time off from the juveniles, and you took 4 months to go hiking. With how many friends?
I went on my own.
On your own as a solo. Okay. So
But like there's people on the trail. Like you're not totally isolated.
Okay.
You know, if I wanted to walk with someone every single day, I could have walked with someone. I just didn't find anyone I wanted to walk with every single day. Some people I'd walked with for a few days, and that was great.
and then you guys go your separate ways.
Yeah, well, like you may be going a little bit faster, or they're going a little bit slower, or you want to take a day off or detour different routes, or like whatever. And for me, having the freedom to walk my days my way, like we say hike your own hike, and you know you have to walk your own walk. Your body is not going to function the same as the body of the other person. Your mind's not going to function the same. And so being able to hike with someone long-term such a far way is a massive, massive commitment. And it takes a massive toll as well. Because you go through it, man. You really go through it. And so having the opportunity to do things my way and do it as I need to do it for myself, because I am like a very, what's the word? I can't think of it. But I do feel a lot of pressure around other people, and like I like want that impacts the decisions that I make, because I kind of lose touch with what I need and what I need to be doing very quickly. And so being able to have that freedom for myself to do that my way is really, really important. And that's also been part of my travel a lot of the time as well when I'm not hiking. But yeah.
Okay, so your longest hiking has been 3,000 kilometers. And basically, take me through, like, where did the journey start from? Where did it end? What happens on the road? What are some challenges? I mean, that sounds like a life journey. Say what?
You hike some mountains.
Okay.
You can. So it started in Cape Reinga, which is the most northern point in New Zealand, and it finishes in Bluff. And it's an established trail, so it's not like you're just like freewheeling it the whole way. Like there's a specific trail that you follow the whole time. It's marked specifically. You go through towns where you collect food. There are less towns in the South Island in the second part of the trail, because we have the Southern Alps that run through the middle of the country, and you're pretty much following them. I didn't use my tent so much through that second half because we have a really good hut system in New Zealand, and you can buy like a 6-month hut pass or a year-long hut pass and use those huts freely as you want. And they're not fancy accommodation, but they are roofs, and they have mattresses and bunk beds, and typically they have heating as well. They have fireplaces, and so using that rather than staying in your tent is like a really good option. But you climb mountains, you cross rivers, you like walk. Every day you walk.
But what's the point of hiking or walking if there's a car or there's a bike or there's other means of transportation? Why?
You have to ask that. You're never going to be walking, right? It's slow travel, because there's an achievement in earning every single step, because you see things that you would never ever see in a car, and you have this massive diversity of experiences. Like, you know, I've just finished hiking in the Arctic, and every day I was eating blueberries by the handful, and, you know, hunting out cloudberries in swamps. I just stepped off. Well, I was on the trail at one point, and the trail just randomly stopped, and I stepped off and ended up over knee deep in mud. I nearly completely face planted. And at that point, like, what am I supposed to do? I just step out of the mud and I keep walking. There's nowhere to even wash it off. Like, I'm covered in mud. It's fine. Like, hopefully I have a stream coming up, and maybe if I'm lucky and it's not super cold, I'll go swimming in the lake later. But like, it's a totally different world. It's a totally different reality, and it tests you in every way. But it also is, like, builds in you this absolute resilience that you don't build anywhere else. Like, you don't have any idea how fucking great it is having a kettle that just boils the water for you, and you can have hot drinks whenever you like. Because when you're out there, like, now it doesn't matter because it's not that cold. But when you're out there and there's like Arctic winds, I'm out there dreaming of hot chocolates. Like, all I want is just to press a button and a hot chocolate and be in my hands, because in my hands won't be freezing cold. I just like that kind of stuff. Like, and my tea was raining on the inside because I roll around in the night a lot, and I lean up against the side. And I woke up at one point and there was water dripping on my face. And I was like, oh, great. I'm at a point now where I was just fine with it. I just pulled my hood up and kept on sleeping. And I woke up in the morning and I was like motorboating a puddle, like with my breathing. I was blowing bubbles.
Wow.
Because the like thing in my sleeping roll had like created all these puddles of water that would come through the roof. And I was like breathing in it, so I was getting side bubbles. I was like, oh, this is great.
Inside your tent.
Was the inside? Everything's fucking soaked at that point. Like, and that's it. Is that you're in Swedish Lapland, you know? Like, there's fucking reindeers and shit, and like snowstorms happen in the middle of the summer. So when you get cold and when the temperature's dropping and you haven't done the things that you needed to look after yourself, you're actually putting yourself at risk. But you can also make these decisions, no matter how bad you're feeling, no matter how much you've pushed yourself, you can make these decisions to protect yourself. And one of them is keeping your gear dry, and by all means. And things like having a jacket as soon as it starts raining, putting a jacket on rather than waiting until you're wet and cold, and like just basic shit that happen because you have to learn them when you're out doing something like that.
So regardless of how tough and well built the tent, it could be all soaked out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my tent's seen some miles, which is part of the reason. Like, but if you lean against and if you create contact, if you've got an inside wall and an outside wall and you lean against it, so it creates contact, typically it leaks through.
Okay, so what are some, this is quite intriguing to me. I find it very fascinating. I feel it's a very, for me, far-fetched, not something that I'm used to, but also a very disciplinary path. It builds you or shapes you as a person. So
all you do is walk.
All you do is walk, right? But then again, what you're used to, you're walking all right, but what you're used to, like pressing that button to have a hot chocolate, is no longer there. You've deactivated everything that you're used to.
Find somewhere to sleep.
Exactly.
You have to not binge eat all your food. That's something I have an issue with. Sometimes
binge on what?
All your food.
Okay. So you have to take it in parts.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't be sad eating your breakfast for the next 3 days.
So what kind of food are you taking along with you? How much do you eat? Because we also have to be worried about how much you're carrying.
Of course. And your pack weight is everything right now, hi. It's really important. And like I said, I have this thing when I'm pushing too hard. I'm an emotional eater, and so I will buy the food that I need, and then I will have snacks or whatever to bulk out my meals because I need more than the bare minimum, and I will eat all of the snacks on day one, and then I will get fucking hungry after that. But that's something that I just need to make peace with because I'm not doing it. I do it every fucking time. It's fine. But I eat muesli for breakfast with milk powder or something like that. For lunch, I eat peanut butter wraps. And for dinner...
How many of those do you have in your bag? And how long does it last? I mean, there's no fridge.
Oh, everything. Fridges are not as essential as you think they are.
Okay.
You can pack out cream cheese, a block of, Philadelphia cream cheese, and it will last you 5 days. I've done it in Australia, and it was lasting me a week. And it was 30 degrees every day then. You don't need fridge as often as you think.
Okay. So you think in society we're spoiled? In society, there's so many things that we don't need, but yet we think we are so dependent on it.
No, what I'm saying is that there's so many things that you don't realize, but also fridges are great because they increase the longevity of your food, right? But when you're carrying a very limited supply of food, I want to be walking out to my next food supply hungry.
Okay.
Because if I still have food in my bag and I'm not hungry, then I've carried too much food, and that's just been a waste of fucking energy.
Okay. So 4 months hiking, at what point, how long do you need to stop to get some food from a supplier?
It really depends. Pretty much you do it as often as you can. So like through there were like in the first part there was food every couple of days. So you never carried more than 2 days of food. In the bottom part of the South Island, the longest section I did was 7 days worth of food, which is a week of food's heavy.
Right.
But like typically your day's food will weigh maybe 800 grams per day.
Okay.
So, sometimes more.
Has there been a point where you're traveling, hiking, and you're so hungry that you have to get food in the forest or on the mountain somewhere, or kill an animal?
No. You do, personally, no. And I mean, if there is fruit available or, edible greens or whatever along the trail, I'll always pick them in supplement meals anyway, because the nutrient value is massive when you're long-term hiking. And so I will always do that, but I will never depend on it.
Excuse me, okay.
But I have definitely run out of food. I've done multiple days without food, and it sucks. And it's not so much the physical toll it takes. It's that when you're operating in such a big calorie deficit, emotionally, I crash. And I know in my head that it's because I haven't eaten enough. But like, I am so miserable. Everything hurts. I hate everything. I don't know why I'm there. And like, it's every step of the way. And like, it's a hole you don't feel like you can get out of. And even though you know it's because it's the food, it doesn't feel like it's the food, because you're not starving hungry. Or even if you are hungry, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's not your body, it's your mind that's hurting, or whatever.
Okay. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
So, yeah. Plus also, like, apparently the average person can last 3 weeks without food before their organs start shutting down. And,
Right.
like, I'm always carrying enough fat to not have to worry about that. So I reckon I got probably at least 5 weeks on there. And that's a long ass time. Like, even if I'm burning double the amount of calories, I still got minimum 2 weeks of like solid walking with zero food, and my organs are still doing fine. Like, everything's fine. So that's pretty safe.
Okay, so you've been working on your job for about 7 years. You've been hiking for how long?
My first long hike was through COVID. So 2021.
Okay.
2021, 2022, New Zealand summer.
Okay.
And then the following year, I went to the US and hiked for 3 months on the PCT. And then I've done like quite a bit of hiking in New Zealand in between. We call it tramping, by the way.
Tramping.
But,
So you guys don't call it hiking, you call it tramping.
yeah.
Interesting. So now, as you're tramping or hiking, what are some of the most challenging things you had to go through? And how does that teach you about life?
I think it's not so much, for me, it's not so much the events, it's that are like particularly challenging. Like, I'm very good at dealing with the here and now. So when shit unfolds, I can deal with it. Yeah. It's more the accumulation. And because I'm hiking on my own and there's no one else there, I have a tendency to push really hard because I want to find limits. Uh-huh. And in doing that, I also kind of burn myself out a little bit. Uh-huh. And that does take a toll on my health. I mean, I've had to come off trail multiple times because my feet have just been destroyed with like infections, and I've had to go out and get antibiotics and come back again or whatnot, because you're walking in rivers for like weeks straight and your feet just stay wet and they pretty much start rotting.
Oh,
So like things like that are the big challenges for me. And you know, my most recent hike, I
Their color is now
really, I actually like it was a big thing for me to recognize that. Like, I went through that whole hike. It was 500 kilometers. It took me 20 days, 19 days, but whatever. And I came out of that and I hadn't wrecked myself at all. I'd every step of the way I'd done what I needed to make sure that it was sustainable for me, in terms of distances, but also in terms of like staying in mountain huts when I needed to, and spending time with other people when I needed to, and taking space away from those people when it became too much for me. And like all of those things are things that I've learned because I've had to, and I haven't been able to do that in my other hikes. And so I guess it makes me feel good to know that I can look after myself in that way, even when there's no one to know regardless. And even when, like I said, my tendency is to like push hard and like achieve things.
so within your first tramping or hiking,
Full of hiking.
you know, did you at least go with others? Did you go with a group?
And almost every day I hiked on my own, even though there were people camping at similar places to me, because that's just how it happens. You congregate, you stay at the huts, whatever. There was
just that.
a guy that I hiked with a little bit towards the end.
It's almost here.
And a few, like, there's people that you see on the trail and you just keep passing and they'll keep turning back up because you're going similar speeds. And there's also people that, because I hike faster, there's people that I walk through and I will know I'm never going to see that person again because I'm walking so many more kilometers than them. And so you make up kilometers. But yeah, I did meet a beautiful friend in the last 10 days of my hike who I'd been reading about in the hut books. So they have hut books that you write your intentions in for safety purposes. And I'd been reading about this girl in particular, Millie Moon, the whole way. And I'd been noticing because she'd always done little drawings and
On the way.
yeah, like with her name, like in the book, and sometimes she had funny comments or whatever. So like I knew about it, and I'd met so many people that had met this girl. I knew she had blue hair and dangly earrings, and I was like, I want to meet her, but I kept missing her. Like I never crossed paths with her literally for 3.5 months until the last 10 days when finally we crossed paths and she walked into this hut, and I was like, oh my God, you're Millie, right? And she was like, who are you? I was like, you don't know me, but I've been reading about you. And like, I've read so many stories about like all sorts of shit that you're doing in my head. And like, there's even jokes about like various things you've written in the hut. So we've constructed this whole fantasy about you. And now you're here. This is super cool. Do you want to hear all about it? And she's just looking at me. She was like, oh, no, not fucking clue. But she's also an amazing musician and storyteller.
Okay.
And I spent, like I said, I walked with her for those last 10 days. And those 10 days, I was really burnt out. I was on struggle street. I absolutely hated it.
Oh.
And I think in a lot of ways, she carried me through that and got me to that finish line, but also made space for me to feel okay about it as I went as well.
Also, you guys became friends.
Yeah, we're really good friends.
Interesting.
And she's since made a fringe show like a storytelling show based on the experience on the TA, and has traveled in
What's a TA?
the hike, Te Araroa,
Okay.
but is a TA. Let's see, we'll just call it TA.
Okay.
But anyway, the hike, and has taken it to Edinburgh and is currently touring New Zealand and Australia with it, which is really cool. Because it really captures in a creative way the emotional experience that you go through and the evolution that you go through when you are hiking, because it is really hard for me to communicate with you or like with anyone who hasn't been in that space and spent so much time in that space, like what a transformative space it is.
I'm transformed by listening to you. I'm intrigued by your excitement. I'm so amazed, and I am someone who have talked to a lot of people, and I'm looking at you like
You've just gone to
you're
these lines
amazing.
lined up.
No, I'm serious. I'm so fascinated about you. I have never spoken to a hiker. Perhaps maybe that's why. You know, I mean, there's the first time. There's a first time for everything, but goddamn, I mean, it takes resilience. It takes some sort of real power to do what you do, but that cannot be taken away from you, and not everyone can do that.
Talent. I do really believe that most people can do most things, and everybody could go and hike and do what I did. The difference is that you need to fully commit to what you're doing, and you need to be prepared for the journey.
That's the
because
challenge.
it's a massive journey, and it breaks you, and it rebuilds you, and then it breaks you again.
How did it break you and then rebuild you? How? I want some specifics. I want to know on your journey, at what point did you stop and cry? At what point did you?
Times. I'm not a big crier. When I'm actually upset, I don't cry. But I just put it on the inside, tough it out. But yeah, I mean, in so many ways, in the first 3 weeks, my body like packed up because I'd pushed so hard, and like you're in pain, man, and I was in so much like. Even in the first 5 days, you're walking a beach. It's called 90 Mile Beach. You're walking a beach, and like you're literally walking on a single stretch of beach for 4 days, and it does not change. At one point, there's like a little outcrop with like an islandy thing, and that's the only landmark that you have for like 4 days straight. You're just fucking walking the same beach, and I was walking in shoes, and I decided to walk in bare feet for big sections of it because you're walking in really hard sand, and because I enjoy walking bare feet, but there was a big fuck up really because I got blisters on the soles of my feet. When I put my shoes back on, it made no difference.
Yeah.
And so I was having to drain them and strap them up.
Wow.
And what ended up happening was I strapped it to, and like I would just put my shoes on and forget about it. Like there was so much pain down there. I just had to like emotionally cut my foot off at the ankle and walk on it because it was just, you couldn't deal with it. You just had to walk on it. And so I was out there doing that, and I got to the end of this beach to this place called Ahipara, which is like a kind of a township. There was a campground there, and so I was camping there, and I took my shoes off and was like, I think my toes are broken, and they were just searing pain, man. Like so much pain. I couldn't comprehend it until days. Like I didn't even know. I couldn't even hobble. I was so hungry. I couldn't even go and get food, even though the shop was there, because I like just couldn't put anything through my feet. I remember calling my mum and be like, I don't know what's wrong, but something's so wrong. Like maybe my toes are broken. I don't think they're broken. And I'd cut off the circulation to them because my tape was too tight. And so they just like had no circulation for 2 days. But they came back and it was fine. So I kept walking the next day. Like I got up in the morning and like they were in slightly better condition. So you just put your shoes on and you keep walking.
But you had to relax for a little bit to reset.
Well, it's really, I was just so wrecked. I get to sleep. I couldn't go.
Okay, so I'm still boggled by how you got started just wanting to hike and then on top of it just being confident enough to just do it alone. I mean, I know you meet people on the path, but you're mostly setting up your space to sleep at a point where there was no one in the area at all.
Yeah. Well,
I would go against the British as well.
my why on this trail, because it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to start through hiking, come through hike it. It was, I'm going to try this trail. Like I want to try to walk Tarny. And I was aware of it because I had some Canadian friends who had come over to hike this trail. And so it was kind of on my periphery. And people were coming from all over the world, like hikers all over the world knew about this. And they were coming to New Zealand and walking this trail. And in a summer, they were seeing more of New Zealand than I had ever seen. They knew my country better than I did. And better than, most New Zealanders did in hiking this trail. And so through COVID, our borders were closed and there was a lot of fear about leaving and then not being able to come back to New Zealand. And so the idea of leaving, I know there was some flexibility in other countries, but the idea of leaving New Zealand for like those 2 years was just not an option in my mind or in most Kiwis' minds. And so I was at a family do and people were asking me what I was doing for the summer, and I panicked and was, I didn't want the pressure and was like, no, I'm walking the length of New Zealand. And immediately everybody shut me down. But like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Do you realize how big those rivers are? You're in the forest, that sort of thing. And I was like, no, like it's an actual trail, it's a thing. And my cousin was like, why on earth would you do it in one go? Why don't you just take time off from work, do it week by week, do section by section, over time you can build up. Jamie, like, the whole point is that I don't want to go to work. Why on earth would I draw this out over 5 years of my life? I'm doing this in the summer. And that was kind of the moment for me where I was like, well, I've said it out loud. It's just become a thing. And the fact that people don't think I can do it, like, I can't let them be right. I can't just be full of ideas, and so I, within the next month or so, got my stuff together. I didn't know what I needed or what I wanted because I hadn't done heaps of hiking before. So I figured I'd bring what I had and use what I had. And I knew that I was going through Auckland, which is a really big city, within like 3 or 4 weeks. So I could upgrade. I had the money there to upgrade everything that needed upgrading at that point if I needed to. But I was just going to start with what I had. And I did that. I started with what I had and I stuck with it the whole way. So it was just kind of like thrown together. It wasn't planned out. It wasn't ultra light. Like I was just like, fuck it. You just got to test to see if you can do it. And so I never had confidence that I was going to finish it until, it wasn't even real that I was doing it and succeeding at it until I was like already halfway down the country, And by then it was like, yeah, well, you keep walking. That's all you do. You just keep walking.
I'm sure there's a big community of hikers. So would you say there's an infrastructure on the trail that is created?
Yeah, there's good trail infrastructure. Like for the TA in New Zealand, there's an app specifically. There's also apps like far out that spread a whole bunch of through hiking trails, and these trails not only have the route, but they have campsites and like facilities and things marked. and water sources as well, because water's super important. There's also like a really big trail angel community around these trails often, which are people who are willing to give their time, sometimes their houses, their space, to pick up hikers or to host them or to give them a hot shower, whatever.
All right.
Yeah.
Promise me one thing. I'd like to see you again. I'd like us to connect again.
Sure, come and find me.
And have.
I'll share my peanut butter wraps. I'll take a mixture.
I don't think I could do that. I mean, this is like a stop for you on your hiking journey, correct?
I'm gonna be bikepacking. I have been bikepacking.
Okay.
I wanted to try it out.
Okay. So now you're a little off the hiking and you're doing bikepacking. We're gonna get into that a little bit because you've told me some things off camera that I thought was crazy, risky, and quite exhilarating. But what was I wanted to find out in terms of the trail of hiking. There is an infrastructure. There's a huge community, and people do these. I'm wondering, like, well, of course, it's like they break, right?
From the
Okay.
or like from the
It's a passion. It's also an endurance sport, but just very low impact.
Why do you do it? What is your why? You mentioned it briefly, but please get into it a little more. What is your why?
I mean
My
you obviously have to
why is because
go
I want to be closer to nature, and I want to be closer to nature because I think that a lot of the questions that I have for the world and for myself and for whatever else can be found rather than being with people, but also seeing in nature.
so that's why it
Does make sense, but you get the idea.
Okay.
I had a sense of connection and see patterns and see so much beauty in those natural places that I just like. Humans are great, but humans are this tiny, tiny little piece of the puzzle, you know, and that there's just this massive system around us, this massive diversity, this massive existence that we're so egocentric, we're so based on like our realities as society and as communities and as individuals and as our like, you know, our personal experience of the world. And that's not where I want to spend my energy. I want to spend my energy looking at the biggest systems and the biggest spaces and the places that we're at and contemplating that. And I can do that in, like, you only see that in nature. And I think I understand people better by being in nature as well.
Interesting. So, if you had to sleep, you just set up your tent anywhere.
Yeah, typically on the trails, like that's what you can do. In Sweden, you're allowed to camp anywhere you like. They have almonds and I can't remember what it's called, but it starts with A, and it's like freedom to roam.
Okay. How about in New Zealand?
In New Zealand, you're allowed to camp in conservation land, but it's a lot harder to do so. And so often you end up camping close to the huts. Like I said, it's a really good hut system. But you are allowed to camp in the wild as long as you leave no trace. And it's the same, like on the PCT, you have a corridor within, I think it's like a 10-mile corridor where you're allowed to camp. And there's like places where you can see, because not everywhere's campable. And a lot of the time, even flat areas can be really uncampable because they're wet or because they're lumpy or they have stones or, you know, all sorts of reasons. They're in bear territory. God, there's many things to consider. Or flood or anyway, whatever. And so there's places where other people have camped where it's flatter now, or like the area is a little bit cleared or whatever, and you try to camp on those places because it reduces the environmental impact. So like there's those considerations as well. I just like a part of this trip I did the Lycian Way in Turkey, and you can camp anywhere you like along that trail as well, which is really, really cool. And Turks in general are really supportive of people free camping wherever they like, which was something that I didn't expect, and it was a really beautiful thing to experience there because people welcoming, you know, they see you hiking and they want to drink chai with you. Let's go and drink chai. They're like, give me. I've already had 6 chais today. Like I haven't walked anywhere. I don't want more chai. And they want to host you, you know, and they want to hang out and spend time, and they will share, and like that hospitality was really, really cool. And having that on such, you know, in a Muslim country, a country that's very, very different from culture that I've grown up in and familiar with, was beautiful as well, because it wasn't expected. It wasn't. I had no idea what to expect in Turkey. But yeah, that was also the strip.
Interesting. So now, while on the trail, do they have restroom infrastructures and stuff like that, or you just take a dump anywhere?
Depends where you are. Like the hut systems have toilets, or they have drop toilets or whatever. It's often not that complicated, but yeah, you dig a hole and we shit in the wild.
Damn.
And cover the hole.
Trying to reach.
And make sure you don't use wet wipes because they don't break down.
Wait.
Otherwise, you have to carry them. Toilet paper you can veer, but like wet wipes, sometimes you see them on the trail and it's like.
So what would you use to wipe?
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper. Then you throw it out.
Yeah,
Very-
put it in the home, bury it.
Very.
Yeah. As long as you're like subalpine, it's not an issue because it breaks down and naturally decays. So you're covering it so that animals and stuff don't get into it before it breaks down, and to like speed up that process. It sounds way more like wild.
It sounds way more like.
Wild than it is. It's not that. Like it becomes really quite normal quite quickly.
Right, I'm sure in your world. In your world, have you encountered any endangered species at all on your path?
Nah, but I got really excited the first time I saw white reindeer because I didn't know they came in white.
Okay.
And this is a dumb story. It's a really dumb.
Well, tell me the dumb story.
So I was sitting on this rock, like, and I was like trying to keep my mouth up, you know, with myself. And I was watching this reindeer, and they were really beautiful. And then, and it was a mother and its baby, and they saw me, and they came over a little bit, and then they were like eating and whatever, you know, whatever. I was watching them, and then these other ones came over the herd, and one of them looked like the horse, and I kind of looked at it. It was like, oh, what do you call a reindeer with no horse? A horse, or no antlers, a horse. And I was like, oh, that's kind of funny. I was meditating on the fact that like this is so fucking scary. Why am I sharing this?
Oh, please.
You know, like reindeer are kind of like the real version of unicorns, and you know, unicorns are cool because they're these mystical creatures. But what is really like the differences between a reindeer and a unicorn are totally arbitrary. One's white, the other one's not, you know, and rather than having one corn, you've got 2 sets of these beautiful velvet antlers, which are like fucking unreal. Like if you didn't know that they existed and someone told you about them and was like, okay, so imagine this thing, and then you've got, you know, these antlers, and every year they grow more spines, but then they rub them off each year, and you know, they're made of bone on the inside, and you know, like painted with a picture. It would totally boggle your mind, and you'd be so taken with it. But because they're real, they're like not as vicious. And anyway, I was like, yeah. And then like I looked over the other way, and was sitting on this hill. And I normally wear glasses, but on the trail I lost my glasses, so I can't see very well at the moment, which really affects my experience. But I just haven't sorted it.
Can you see me okay?
Yeah. It's just like, the longest, like all the scenery I can't see. But I looked up.
Okay.
Looked up at this. Looked up at this hill and I was like, "Hey, look, they've got goats over there." It's like, "That's cute." And I was like, "Nah, they're probably rocks." I was like, "Imagine if they're white unicorns." I was like, "Then they could be bicorns because they've got two and they're not corns, so it'd be like bicorns but with like little asterisks on it." I've been on my own for a few days at this point, so this is just where I'm at. Anyway, I continued on and whatever, and then was like, "Oh yeah, what do you call white reindeer and goat?" And I just go on. I got up and started walking, and as I got closer, I was like, "They're white reindeer." It's like, white reindeer don't exist. They're only brown, they're black, they're dark. But they were fucking white reindeer. And when I got close enough to see that they actually were white reindeer, followed my mind. I couldn't believe it. I was frothing. I was so excited about that shit. And a simple Google search could have fixed this problem ages ago. But it didn't do that, of course. So I felt like I was in National Geographic. I was trying to film it, oh my gosh, these must be so unlike.
Who bust your bubble?
The next German that I met, the next person that I met that happened to be a German hiker. And I was trying to be cool, not I was acting natural. It's like, "Oh, isn't it beautiful? Blah, blah, whatever." It was like, "Oh, if you keep an eye out, there's some white reindeer within the next 15 minutes. I thought they were really cool." So first time I've seen them, I didn't even know they came in white. Just prefacing that it was going to be a letdown. And he was like, "Yeah, I see them everywhere. They are all behind you. You will see them." I was like, "White ones?" He was like, "Yeah, they're everywhere." Well, that's great. I'm really excited to see them as well.
So you thought you've seen
uncovering new species.
new species, unicorns.
Albino ones. They're albinos.
Oh my God. No, but that's actually great. I mean, it's a good story to share because it's perspective, right? It's based on your knowledge, right? It's all relative, right? If she didn't come and bust your bubble, all you know is that you've discovered new.
Yeah, I was gonna.
You take it with your lab.
All the conservation area.
Yeah, totally. This new discovery. Amazing. Wow. Okay, so you've been hiking for 2 to 3 years now. About 3 to 4 years, I guess. 2, 3, 4. And now you take 6 months off from work to do that. But currently, you're still taking time off from work.
Kind of.
Talk to me about that.
Well, I want to go to the UK and work, but I haven't sorted it out. Nothing's sorted out. So I saved up some money and was like, fuck it, I'm going to Europe. I've been talking about going to Europe forever because my dad's British. And so I can get a British passport and I have extended family here because my mum's side is Dutch.
Okay.
So for years I've been like, I'll come to Europe. But I also knew that it was going to be far more expensive here than it is in South America, Southeast Asia, and, the other places that I work. And so I needed to have funds when I came. And I finally got around to it. I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it. I'm coming here. But I came here with absolutely no plan. I knew that I wanted to hike in the Alps, but it was a high snow year and I needed to wait for the soda melt. So I was like, maybe I'll go to Turkey. So I went to Turkey, did hiking there, and then ended up working in a hostel there, which just unfolded. I finished my hike and I went to this hostel to stay just for one night to like reset myself, and then I was going to move on. And I just, but the people there were amazing. And it was a really, really cool vibe. And so I stayed another night, and then I stayed another night. And by the time I'd stayed 4 nights, I was like, okay, I need to go because I'm just blowing money and I don't need to stay here forever. And I was going to check out. And one of the girls that was volunteering there, because they had some like work exchange volunteers, whatever that gig going on, was like, you should just ask them if you could volunteer. And I was like, I don't do volunteering. Not really my thing, because I figure if I'm working, I may as well work and do something meaningful to me, work in New Zealand, make good money, rather than spending my time traveling, doing hours, doing something that I probably don't like that much just to like stay somewhere for a night for free, or, you know, consecutive nights, whatever. But ended up at this job.
At the hostel.
Yeah, that got extended and then got extended again, and then I was there for nearly a month, and it was fucking amazing. Don't get me wrong, it was so good, but I hadn't planned to be in Turkey for that long, and it just kind of happened. But I got to the end of that and, you know, saw a few of the touristy things, because I hadn't really traveled around so much. I'd spent pretty much all my time in the same region. So I traveled around, saw those places, and was going to come to Europe proper. By then the snow was like not just melted, it was pretty much gone. And I'd missed my window to do the really long hike that I wanted to do. So that was kind of off the table. And I was in Istanbul knowing that I was going to fly out in the next couple of days, but I didn't know where to. I was thinking maybe Amsterdam, maybe I'd get a bike. I was at a total loose end. And I do this quite regularly to myself. I don't have a plan, and then I just don't deal with it. I don't stress about it, but I don't deal with it. And then everything suddenly catches up, and it's like, you're in the middle of nowhere, and what are you doing? You've got no clue. Which was kind of what had happened at that point. And I was in Istanbul, and a friend called and asked me if I was going to see him this summer. He was in Belgium. It was a hiking friend that I'd met on the New Zealand trail, actually. And he was like, you said you're coming over, like, I'm making plans, am I going to see you? And I was like, well, actually, I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm flying to probably Amsterdam, like, in the next few days. And he was living in Ghent. He was like, just get on a train, come to my house. And you said that you wanted to, you said you wanted to bike pack. Mm-hmm. I've got a bike. Like, I have the bike. Come to my house. You just need to sort out your route. Stay for a week. I'm moving out of the flat in a week, so you can stay for a week and live whatever you need to do and get your shit sorted, work out a route. I will sort the bike. I'll show you the mechanics. I'll get it sound. It's got a full like bike packing set up. Mm-hmm. You just need to make sure the size fits for you, and any adjustments you make, we can do that. We can sort it while you're here. And then you just jump on your bike and you go. And so that's what I did. And I cycled from Ghent through the north of Holland, and then through the north of Germany, through the west coast of Denmark up to Skagen, the very top. Mm-hmm. And then I went back down a little bit to Gothenburg. And my plan at that point, I'd initially thought that I wanted to keep cycling north, but I'd experienced heaps and heaps of rain in Denmark, and I'd really struggled with that. And I thought, if the weather just keeps getting colder and wetter, I'm going to be miserable, and there's going to be fewer and fewer people. And I'd really miss the connection, because I thought bikepacking, I would have the same experience that I have hiking, where like you have this community. And even though you're not with people the whole time, the interactions that you have are really warm and they're really grounded. And so I don't feel lonely even when I'm alone out there. Because I know where to find people, and I know when I find them, they're going to get it, and they're going to be there in whatever capacity I might need them to be, because they get it, you know. And I hadn't had that experience at all on the bike, and that had shocked me a little bit and made me feel a little bit isolated. And so, yeah, going north wasn't a great option. I went across to Gothenburg, thought I was going to cycle to Stockholm, and then just decided, fuck it, I'm going to do more hiking then. I'm going to go up and do the Kungsleden in the north. So once I got to Stockholm, I would just catch the train and work the bike out afterwards, whatever. But when I got to Gothenburg, the guy at a bike shop, I had to get some work done on the bike. And they were like, why are you cycling that way? You should cycle south. South is way more beautiful. You should totally just go south instead. Like, the rest you can work out as you go. And so I just did that. And so I cycled south. I cycled for 28 days.
28 days
Yeah.
on the road.
2,500 kilometers. And my longest day was 211 Ks. And the reason why that was important to me was because the first time I was ever introduced to bikepacking, in the same conversation, someone told me that 200 kilometers in a day is like a gold standard. It's like a 60-kilometer day when you're hiking. Like 200 Ks is massive. And because it might not be so much for like road cyclists or people that are like leisure cycling or sports cycling, but when you're bike packing, not only are you carrying considerably more gear on your bike, which slows you down, but you're also cycling every single day.
Okay.
And so the distances that you're covering are generally like a little bit shorter because you have to sustain it and you have to build a whole life around it. You have to set up tent, you have to do all your meals, like things that you don't worry about when you're just doing like a weekend blat to burn some energy or to climb a hill or whatever fuck. So yeah, but I'd been told like 200 Ks was kind of like the gold standard. And I just wanted to see if I could make it 200 Ks. And I did, and it was a big day. And my ass was really sore the next day, but I had to get on the bike and cycle another 150. So you just set that up and you keep going. So yeah, I did that, and that was cool. And now I'm going to go back and jump on the bike again and cycle. I'm going to take the train to Gothenburg because I've done that loop and done that section where I cycle towards Norway.
So what brings you to Stockholm? Like, why did you have to stop at Stockholm?
Because the train that comes from the Tarny goes to Stockholm.
Okay.
And then I had to catch a bus. And I figured I may as well, like, I don't know when I'm going to be back here. I may as well stay here at least long enough. Like, I've spent a day here on the way up. I'll stay 2 days again, at least long enough to have seen a piece of the city. Not the whole city, not a big part of it, but at least have a feel for, like, what some of it is. And so I did that.
Interesting. So now at this point, how do you return the bike?
Well, conveniently, I don't have to. I thought I was going to have to bring it back to Belgium, and I didn't know what that was going to look like. Probably put it on a bike box and get on a plane, even though I don't really like flying if I can avoid it. But whatever. But no, a mutual friend of Alan, who's the bike owner, and I's, Aaron, has decided he wants to tour on the bike, and so he got in touch with Alan and was like, can I borrow it too? And he's flying into Oslo and is going to take the bike from there on the 7th, which lines up really well for me. So all I have to do is get it to Oslo, because then I don't have to worry anymore. I'm done. I'm retiring. But now.
Wow. Okay. So now you're going to be taking a bus, right? Or the train?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I'm taking a night bus, yeah.
Night bus. So what will be the destination?
Mama.
Malmo.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is 3 hours or so from here.
Well, it's like 9 hours on that bus, but yeah.
Oh, in the bus. Yeah. By train is 4 hours. Yeah.
But I figured rather than spending half of my days sitting on a train looking out a window, which I don't really want to do, I may as well spend half the money on a bus, because I will just sleep.
Right.
And then I'm not actually wasting any of my daylight time, which is the time that matters.
Right. Okay, so once you get to Malmo, then where are you going next?
I'm collecting my bike from the man that's looking after my bike, Carlos, and
Okay.
then I think I will take it on the train to Gothenburg because I've already cycled that section. There's no point in recycling Malmo to Gothenburg or whatever.
Okay.
And then I'm gonna cycle to Norway. And my
You cycle from Gothenburg to Norway.
it's not that far. Like to Oslo, it's like 318 kilometers or something.
Okay.
But I want to actually continue on and go to Bergen, I think, and then just take the train back because I have maybe almost 2 weeks on my sleeve. I may as well spend it biking, right?
Okay.
What else am I going to do at this point?
So after the 2 weeks, then what happens?
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise.
So you've got lots of like logistic based questions that I don't have organized.
Okay. So basically, do you return to work? Do you figure out
No, I'm
what
going to go to the UK.
you know the to UK?
I'm really trying hard to manifest a job, and I'm hoping it just falls in my lap.
Okay. So, but at this point, you're quitting New Zealand.
For now, I'm taking a break. I will come back to New Zealand for sure, but I want to at least give myself an opportunity to set up a life somewhere else because I've traveled, but I've never done that. I
Interesting.
want to do that.
Interesting. So now, sort of like your biking, or your bikepacking experience, it's over for now.
When I get to Bergen.
When you get to
7th of September.
okay.
For now, that trip at least is done.
Okay. What has been the most important lesson learned through the journey, whether it's hiking, bikepacking, or whatever? Like, what has been the most valuable lessons you think you have acquired through this journey?
Oh, I don't like the question because it's a most question. I can think of a lesson. I can think of a few lessons, but I don't want to label them as the most important.
Okay, then let's go with few lessons.
One of the lessons is of how important it is to find your peace and to protect your peace. And that has come out of so much time spent thinking and processing and going through who I am and how I am and everything that goes on in your mind when you're hiking on your own. And I guess, I've realized that you have all these experiences, these events in your lives, these interactions, these hardships and traumas, and and they can manifest in so many different ways. But for me, the biggest thing I've been able to do for myself is to find peace for myself. And now I'm at a point where when I'm triggered or when I have experiences that I feel really strongly about, or that are hard, or that bring up stuff, like coming back to my peace and doing the things that I need to do to look after that means letting that shit go.
Okay.
And so that's something that I've learned.
Okay.
That I think is important.
How has this affected your family's and friends' relationship?
I have really special relationships, I think. And I'm so grateful to have those that I do. Being away for long periods has really brought home the value that each of those relationships have in my life, and has also given me the space to really turn up for them and to make the choice to turn up for them, because when you're in routine and you're busy and you're overstimulated and like everything's happening, you're doing normal life, it's so so hard to always be everything that you could be or should be or would want to be for the people that you love, because they're also the people that want to and need to see you with your walls down and want to see the vulnerable version and the real version. And that often when you are busy and you're overwhelmed, that's what you get. You get a distracted version, or you get a stressed version, and that's okay. But I guess having that time and having that space has meant that like I've really been able to, like I said, turn up where it counts, reflect on how important those people are to me and what I want to be to them.
Good. Along the journey, have you encountered any love connections? Any interesting moments with other human species?
Yeah, there's been moments. There's been some good moments. There's been some really beautiful moments and intimate connections, and I think a lot of that is fueled by the recognition that it's fleeting and it's not going to be forever, and it's very natural and it's very real and it's very vulnerable, because that's how you are and that's what you're doing. And that's cool. That's something that I haven't experienced in the same way in like the normal world, because again, like I said, you're just so caught up in, there's so many factors, there's so much noise,
Indeed. So in any of such moment, talk to me about that intimacy connected with nature, how it feels like. I mean, because you are hiking in nature, and any moment shared with a human that because I believe life is temporary, everything is temporary. So with that moment, whether it's a day of being on the same path, or a week or a month or whatever it is, right? How different has it been for you in the realm of intimacy connected with nature, and how that is different from your usual?
Like I said, it just feels so much more real and more vulnerable. Like you are as you are, and that is, I think, very interconnected with the fact that you are in a totally natural world and a very raw world, and you're on a big journey yourself, emotionally as well as literally, and you're sharing a part of that. You're sharing a part of that majesty and that awe and that inspiration, but you're also sharing in the trials and tribulations that you're going through, and the people that are also going through similar are most able to relate to that and to connect with that. And so even when there are people that are very different from you or whatever, their sense of the world and through that period is often very similar. And so you have You have really strong connections. You have such honest conversations. Like you would have the same with traveling, right? You have these really honest and really real conversations because the people that you're meeting that are open-minded and they're wanting to explore, but they're also there's no hang-ups around the conversation or the consequences of the conversation or the consequences of being vulnerable, being real, because you're traveling, you're at a hostel or whatever, you're in another city, you go away and then it never comes back again. And it's kind of the same when you're in the mountains, but I think even magnified again, where there's just this depth that I haven't seen elsewhere yet. I'm sure it is elsewhere. I just need to find those spots, you know?
Do you think that there is any particular one that is a bit lingering you'd love to relive?
No, I think that yeah. There's maybe one that I would like to revisit, I think.
Talk to me about it. What was so good about that?
I think it just it was more recent and there was so much left unexplored or unsaid. It was really interesting. And yeah, like often I think that intimacy and that connection is very contextual. It's over time and a place, and when you go out of that place and you're in a different context, it's really hard to maintain that connection in the same way and to turn up as the same person you were, because you're not like you can't be that person when you're in a city, you know. Or like in real life, like you have to be socially acceptable. It's terrible.
But why though?
Because it's not acceptable. Some of the things that happen in the wild, you just can't, like, you got to shower more than once a week.
Like what?
You got to shower more than once a week.
You got to shower?
When you're in the city.
Right.
You've got to have a shower.
Right.
More than once a week when you're in a city. You can't like walk around in bare feet in Stockholm.
Right.
But half the time I was bare feet. Like there's so many details and so many things that are normal out there that just don't work here. But there's also so many pressures and influences and like things that change it. And I have explored some of those relationships off the trail, and they have been beautiful, but they haven't been forevers. They were never forevers.
Right.
And
but what was so different? What was so different about it? I know you're circling it, but I'm so interested in that. I think this is the excitement of it all. You know, what was so different about that, right? I understand the city and that are two different things. You see, as we tell the story, we want to engage. We want to...
I don't have anything there's nothing to tell in this story. And I think that's what it is that there's just so many what ifs because there's no story to tell. There's a man who I met on the trail. So what happened on the King's Trail, the Kunsleden, was I started with a friend who she told me she was going to she wanted to hike it. She was planning to hike the Camino and pulled out because she didn't want to be on her own. And called me and was upset about it or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to hike the Kungsleden if you want to join. And she was like, yes, that would be amazing. That's totally what I want to do. That's everything that I want to do. Cool. After 3 days, she'd had a guts ball. She was going back to Perth. She was walking out. And I was like,
She was quitting.
she's quitting. I was like, hey, babe, I'll walk out partway with you. It's all good. And like over those 3 days, I had really struggled to hold space for her because I'd been on the bike and I'd had to push really, really hard, which was part of the reason why I ended up with the 200K days. I'd had to push really, really hard in order to get there in the time frame that she needed to hike in. And so I'd physically but also emotionally really pushed to like get to the starting line. And I got there and was not as organized as I wanted to be, and I was a bit messy, but it was fine. And she was even messier. She was prepared, but emotionally she wasn't able to hold it together. And so I had to create a huge amount of space for her to go through the things that she needed to go through, knowing that, like, you know, this is what it is when you're hiking and you're committing to a really big thing. And when you have expectations of how you're going to perform and what you're going to be able to do, and then suddenly reality comes and kicks your ass and you realize that, you know, it's not the same as going out on your 2-day hikes or whatever the fuck, you know? And so that happened, and I didn't hold any resentment. I was totally okay with it. I did everything I could to make that okay for both of us. But I dropped her off, went up the tallest mountain in Sweden, Kebnekaise, by the way. That was cool. I didn't even know it was there. I only found it because she was leaving and I was at the bottom of it, and then I was like, oh, this is the tallest in Sweden. I guess I'll go up there. So we went up there, came back down, went back to the trail. But I was kind of all over the show. I didn't know what I was doing going forwards. And when I'm in that position, I have a tendency to just push. Like, I'll just push. And this is when this guy turns up. And he was just there. I decided I was going to stop at one of the mountain shelters and have a sauna, which is an experience in itself, because there's lots of sweaty hiker bodies just sweating out the grit, you know, and then you go and dive in this lake and then come back again and everyone's just all naked and there's people sitting around like trying to eat their dinner, you know. And it's just this weird juxtaposition of things that are not acceptable in normal life but totally acceptable out here. And he was in the sauna and we struck up conversation, and through that conversation I decided, rather than walking another, because my intention was to walk another 10Ks, I just needed to warm back up and like get my head sorted and feel clean. So I did that, was going to walk on, I didn't. And so we spent that day together. The next day we actually dropped MDMA and hiked, which was fun, and went swimming, and, you know, but there's a lot of questions there, but there was something, but I wasn't, in myself I felt really messy and was like on the verge of melting down at any point. And so I wasn't there 100. And I know that for me, but, you know, no one else would. You'd never know, right?
But why couldn't that be an enjoyed moment, an enjoyed intimacy, and keep it moving?
Well, it was. In reality, that's what it was. But you asked what I would want to come back to, and I think I would want to explore that more.
Okay.
He came from a completely different world to me.
Right. Okay. Interesting. How much I would love to dig deeper into this.
I know. There's nothing to tell, though.
No, I know. I'll find it. I know what I'll find.
If you'd chosen something like, if you'd framed that question differently, maybe there would be more to tell. But with that, there's
Okay.
That's just questions. That's all.
Okay. Now, you've been in a relationship. How did your hiking and your biking affected your traditional relationship? And at what point did it fall apart? And how have you been dealing with that? Or how have you dealt with that?
How do you mean?
So, how has your hiking taken off
Yeah. That.
affected your traditional
My relationship.
relationship?
Are you talking about? I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you're talking about Grace, who joined me to hike the trail, that is a friendship. That's not an intimate relationship in any way.
Okay.
So if that's what you're asking, that is not what that is. But I have not at this point, but a year or so ago, I was in a relationship with a beautiful guy who was also a hiker. And I went to the US to hike on my own. And it got partway through that and was like, I don't want to be doing this on my own. Like, I want to be doing this with Brennan. And I managed to convince him to book a ticket and come over to do a month with me in Washington, which was really fucking cool. Really cool. Except he never came. And that was probably one of the most trying experiences for me hiking, because he was supposed to meet me in Washington. I was flying up. I'd been in the Sierra, so I was flying up from California. And in Seattle, I got a phone call saying he wasn't getting on the plane because he had COVID. And at that point, you couldn't fly. And they were testing and whatever. So I went onto the trail, and we've made like a alternate plan where in a week's time, I was going to be out of town that he could get a connection to. And so he would meet me there at X date, and we would hike from there. And, you know, you're on your own. And I was very much on my own through that section because I was hiking in a different direction to virtually everybody else. And I got out to that town, and he wasn't there. He hadn't got on the plane because he was still sick. And so I got food and stayed a night, I think, and then just went back out on the trail and walked some more. And it happened one more time. And that was hard because I was thrashing through kilometers to try to get there early, but you think about it and you fixate on it. And I'd planned out every detail of all the things that I could organize in the way I could line it up for him, so that when he arrives, like, you know, like, we'd have dinner and this would be sorted and this would be our accommodation, and I'd meet him here at this point, and, you know, and sort of so many logistics, but also like it's all I thought about. And I had no Wi-Fi. I had no internet. Like, I had no connection at all. And then I'd just get out, and then he wouldn't be there, and I'd be like getting punched in the guts. And it's like, what do you do? You walk home. And that happened, and then that happened. And by the time I got to the bottom of Washington, he did fly in. And we were going to go to Central America. We went to Guatemala. But through that process, because I had been so isolated on my own, and it had been such a big emotional battle for me to just be able to continue with that letdown and not hold that against him, and, you know, be okay with it, because it was something that I guess he had no control over, and whatnot. Like, going from that to having this 24/7 contact with someone who was, he's really tactile and he's really in my space. Like he's right there, which was fine most of the time. But going from that extreme to this, it was so high. We went to another country, like it was Spanish speaking. He suddenly had no confidence at all in his Spanish. And so I was responsible for all interactions, for all planning, for everything. And like we crashed so hard. I crashed so hard. And he just didn't turn up for me. And that happened because of the high. That happened because of that experience. And ultimately, like, he didn't understand what I needed from him. And I told him so many different ways. Like I ran out of words for it. And it got to a point where I was like if this, I can't do this. If this doesn't change, you need to go home or you need to travel. Like I need and do this on my own because I can't do it for both of us. And he was like, okay, well, I'll fly home. And by fly home, they meant fly to Australia because apparently traumatized him so much. He wasn't even coming back to New Zealand. And he didn't come back for like 4 years.
Wow.
2 years. So, yeah, hiking takes its toll as well. And you grow. You grow, they grow. Everybody, like all of, that's what life is, I think.
So what is your love preference? Would you say women, men, both?
I'd say both.
Okay. Interesting. So, with all that you've just shared with me, how does it make you feel?
Fine. It's just like, it's almost like stream of consciousness. Like I said, I can just fucking talk, I can chat shit. I've been training. This is what I do at my job as well. I'm just like, all right, lads, you want to come and listen to a story? Shut your mouth for a minute. Come listen to a story. They don't care most of the time, but it's fine.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's good. So now,
How do you feel?
you already know how I feel. I already told you that this is
This is your thing. This is what you do.
it's always different, and the connection is always different for me. I cannot totally explain it, but it's always different and always intriguing in all different ways, especially when someone is open and vulnerable and just being purely themselves without really BSing around things. And with us even off camera, you seem to be open, and I just love your excitement, the smile while you talk about it, because it just shows how, it's part of your personality, but at the same time, you're truly sharing things, even when I felt like that must be tough like hell. And you're laughing through it,
It's just things. It's just things.
Now, the hard questions that you don't like, and I'm sort of like, not digging deep on certain things as much as I would love to. But what would you say that in the next few years from now, what your life will look like?
I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like 2 months from now, honestly. And I struggle with that a lot. I have struggled with that for years. But I don't have a vision for what I want my future to look like. I know many things about what I don't want it to look like, and that's something, but I don't know what I want it to look like. And if I did, I would just pursue it and make it happen, and probably pursue it relentlessly until I decided it wasn't what I wanted anymore, and that's fine. But as long as you don't have that image and you don't know what it is, what are you supposed to pursue? And that's part of the reason why I've ended up very much at a loose end doing things the way that I have done. Because I don't know if this list probably wouldn't have been totally clear from how I talked about it, but I don't plan really at all. I don't pre-plan. I don't really organize, and I have full faith that things will just pan out. And if it doesn't pan out, well, it makes a good story, and I'll manage it.
A story you could tell me later.
Exactly. But you manage it. You work it out.
Yeah.
Something else will happen. Things will always happen, and a lot of that is because I don't know where I want to be going. And I've worked hard to work that out, and I still have no answers. And so I have options and I have ideas, but I don't know.
Okay. In a nutshell, what would you say is the hardest time you've gone through in life?
In the years while I was at university, I really struggled. There was probably actually a 5-year period from when I was 17 to when I was just before 21. I really struggled. I felt a huge amount of pressure. I took 1.5 times the standard course load. I was a high achiever. I expected to have good grades, but I hated university. I stopped going, but just did the assignments at started them at 9 p.m. when they were due in at 6 a.m. the next morning, and was just thrashing it out. Was working full-time as well. There was a period where I was working multiple jobs and sleeping less than 3 hours every day, but it wasn't a single 3-hour block. It was multiple half-hour blocks in my car in between jobs, because that was how much time I had. And I burnt out really badly and crashed really hard and was very miserable and didn't know how to communicate any of that because I had a very big front that I maintained. And yeah, I think that was probably well and truly the hardest. That's how I started traveling the first time. I quit. I just quit everything and got on plane and was like, well, could be dead, so what are you going to do instead?
Interesting. So if you had the opportunity to reconnect with anyone from your past, who would you reconnect with?
People that I've lost touch with, or just I would love to have a conversation with my history teacher from high school. Does that answer your question? Mm-hmm. Because he had massive influence on my little lenses that I can my critical analysis of information and the world. He was my teacher for 3 years and my phone teacher in the last 2 as well. And he was really, really cool. I don't know what I'd say, but it would be cool to see him again and be like, so you're little prodigy dropped out of uni, lol. But thanks anyway. All your hard work went to nothing, but I still appreciate it. I don't know.
Who would you say have hurt you in your life?
I've been lucky that I haven't been hurt so badly. My dad, my parents, but my dad. I had a hard relationship with my dad for a long time, and still it is a trying relationship. He has mental health issues, and there was a period my parents broke up when I was 16 and had like a very tumultuous relationship before that. And drugs were always a part of that world and whatnot. So, but after that, my dad kind of hated me for quite a few years, and my mum used to still make me go and see him. So I had a relationship with my father, and that kind of sucked. So he's probably one of them.
How have you mended that relationship? How have you repaired it, or have you at all?
I've worked very, very hard to repair that relationship and maintain it as an adult by turning up and continuing to turn up, and by being the bigger person in every interaction, every time.
Okay.
And caring, but also having boundaries. And just kind of like what I do in my job, but in my real life, you know.
do you look forward to creating your own family one day?
Yeah, I do.
How does it look like? What is the structure?
Like, I don't have concrete ideas on what it needs to look like. I would love to have a stable and loving relationship, and I wouldn't just want to have one kid. I'd want to have multiple. I always wanted to foster. I've been an egg donor, so I already have biological children somewhere out there that I've met, and they're beautiful kids, and they are great, which is cool. But it's kind of an aside.
You
Me?
you mean you have biological kids?
Yeah, I was.
By then.
It was an egg donor.
Oh, okay. Oh,
I
okay.
gave someone my eggs, and so biologically they're mine, but they are not my children.
So it's
They have a
important.
mom.
It's important. You see how you spoke in code? If I didn't break that down, we would have never understood what that means.
It was because it wasn't relevant to the question.
It is.
It was
It
only
is.
half relevant to the question.
It is very relevant. Okay.
Yeah. Well, there was that. But in terms of like a family, I don't have like I am very I'm not opposed to the idea of a polyamorous or open relationship. I think that love is love, and the more love in a household is more than enough.
Is it okay if on the polyamorous or the polygamy where the man is the one that having multiple? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah, I think it's something that needs to be negotiated, and I don't have an interest in being in a relationship that is one-sided. And so if there was an expectation that I had a partner who could have multiple other partners, but that was something that was not an option, it was limited for me, then that isn't fair, because that creates a power imbalance and resentment and all sorts of other issues that I have no interest in. If there's an expectation that I can have something that you can't, or vice versa, then I'm not interested in that.
Okay. Okay. That's fair. So now, what would you say that at the end of the day you would like to give to people, share based on all your experiences and what you've learned, whether through you go to bed, whether through your experience or all that you've gone through, the up and downs?
I don't know what advice I would give. And I don't know. I think if I could help people understand that I don't know.
You really do. You have so much.
I don't
Okay.
know. I think
What would you say is you live by in life? Your life principle or your life lesson?
to go gently. If I was to like put it as a thing, to go gently. The biggest gift that you can give people or anybody around you is the space to be authentically themselves and the space to be gentle
Okay.
in who they are, but how they are, how they're interacting, what they're doing, how they're making people around them feel, but also how they're engaging with, how they're connecting with, the world out there as well. And for me, that stretches out to your environment.
So how comfortable are you in your own world of intimacy, sexuality, and being?
Hey, I'm pretty comfortable. I have no interest in curating any part of that part of my life, and have had to be quite protective of some of that information because of my job and because for a while I was in a relationship with someone that I was working with, and that became quite public information. It's a dangerous place when it's in that workplace. And so I guess I learned some lessons from that. But I am, MP.
I thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I thank you for sharing your story.
Anytime.
I really appreciate it, but I hope this is just the first version. As we get to know each other, I would like to meet you in another part of the world, if not New York.
Sure.
Because I'm on the road.
Yeah.
I'm on a different journey than you are, but I think we can cross paths, right?
Sure.
Okay, let me put this off.